Most painful construction deaths ever.
Watch your step. Across the United States are large industrial iron foundries that use molten iron to produce things like engine blocks, frames, and structural components for cars and buildings. At the Caterpillar Mapleton foundry in Illinois, molten iron is melted at nearly 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. A heat hotter than lava and hot enough to obliterate human flesh in an instant.
That just terrifies me. I heard forever ago that if you come within 20 feet of lava, you burst into flame. I don't know if that's true, but large amounts of boiling molten liquid absolutely terrify me. And I could never work this job. I would be too scared all the time of dying.
For the workers at this factory, the foundry floor is a place where one wrong step means certain doom. So it's of utmost importance that each crew member moves with caution 100% of the time. On June 2nd, a 39-year-old...
I feel like if your job was that you might die at any moment, that you would just be, by default, be really, really careful.
...man would be working his 5th day at his new job. He was tasked with retrieving a sample of molten iron for testing. He spun down a giant metal wheel that caused the molten iron to pour out of the vat. Afterwards, he leaned over the boiling hot iron. He got close. Really, really close. And then liquid molten iron popped and exploded all over his face.
Oh, he's kidding. Oh, that would be horrifying. Surely that's happened at some point, though.
He successfully retrieved his sample of iron and returned back to his manager. Unluckily, however, he'd somehow slip on the stage and partially fall back into the molten vat of iron. He tried to escape, but it was impossible. Half of his body was in, half of it was out. And before you know it, in an instant, he was consumed by the roaring orange abyss.
Now, look, obviously I'm not saying it's his fault, and I'm sure that there were a lot of failures along the way that caused someone to fall into a vat. But if I'm that close to molten metal, I'd be crawling on my hands and knees to make sure I don't fall in. It's crazy that you would be walking such that you might trip and fall into the molten lava. You're not even allowed to run along the edge of the pool in case you trip and fall. Why would you not be so careful walking along the edge of actual molten metal?
Witnesses described what happened as beyond comprehension. He passed away instantly, but not all of him was consumed. Part of his body remained on the steel deck for the coroner to retrieve. Emergency crews rushed in, but it was already way too late. There was no saving him. The foundry quickly shut down, investigations were launched, and then questions arose.
I feel at the very least, he died instantly. Probably he didn't feel a thing. His flesh was immediately so incinerated that the nerves probably didn't even have a chance to process it. So it's a horrifying way to die, but most likely there was no pain involved. He was just instantly gone. He may not have even known that he was dead.
Could a man with so little training be placed so close to one of the most dangerous areas of the factory? It was literally his 5th day on the job.
That is crazy. Whoever the manager was that sent him down there with no training should absolutely be fired, potentially charged. That is insane. It is your job to keep people safe in one of the most dangerous jobs imaginable, and you send the brand new guy down to the most dangerous place? You've got to be liable.
For his colleagues, it was not the first time they'd seen such horror. Just a year earlier, another worker had passed away at the same plant after a similar fall. And now, yet again, a worker's life had been cut short in the most violent way imaginable.
Why would you not, after the first time it happened, build better guardrails that you can't fall over? Put them nose height so that you can't trip over them. After it happened once, it's crazy that they didn't change anything so it wouldn't happen again.
In factories like these, safety isn't just a guideline, it's survival. When molten metal waits beneath your feet, there's no second chance. One misstep and you're gone in an instant. The cable incident. It was just after noon at the Whitworth sawmill in East Texas. The air was thick with the grind of machines, the smell of fresh-cut pine, and the heat of men working hard to keep the mill alive. But inside, 4 men were locked in a struggle with a jammed wood chip machine. To free it, they turned to the heavy steel cable that wound its way around the gears. They pulled, adjusted, and worked the line, hoping to break the machine loose. And then, in an instant, disaster struck. After working the cable for what felt like forever, they had stretched it out to the point that it extended itself like a bow and tightened back on one of the men. Upon pulling the cable and stretching it back out again to free the man, it finally snapped. The stored energy released with the speed of a bullet and the force of a guillotine. It whipped across the work area with deadly precision, striking all 5 men at once. The impact was catastrophic. 4 of the 5 were decapitated instantly. The 5th man got lucky. He was thrown away to the side and the bones in his leg got shattered, but thankfully his life was spared. For the men who witnessed it, the scene was indescribable. One moment, their co-workers were fighting with some stupid jammed machine. The next second, the floor was silent and each of their bodies stood upright in their same positions with a crucial detail missing. The ground was littered with helmets, sawdust, and bodies. When EMTs arrived at the scene, they were obviously only able to save the man with the injured leg.
That's crazy. I also, like, again, they say that OSHA rules are written in blood. It's like there's got to have been something they could have done before stretching the long and dangerous decapitating cable all the way to its limit. But also, I feel like it's got to be like something of a design flaw, right? Like a wood chipping machine could have a cable in it that if it gets loose would just decapitate people. Surely that's not supposed to happen either. I feel like the dangerous part of the wood chipper is the chipper part, not the cables on the inside.
The sleeve incident. In a cavernous factory in Russia, cameras were quietly watching a scene that would later horrify the world. On the floor stood a massive horizontal lathe. The machine was giant, and its steel cylinder was rotating with an unstoppable force. It was a machine built to carve through metal itself. A Russian man tasked with running the machinery froze upon seeing it. For a couple of moments, he would just squint deeply at the machine, closely inspecting it. His posture was casual, and then from casual, it grew curious. Although it's not entirely clear what it was, the man noticed something wrong with the machine, but after inspecting it, he went about his business. And then he came back because his curiosity got the best of him. Something was obviously wrong with the machine, so he went in for another look. It was then that he realized that he had been inspecting the wrong thing all along. His gaze shifted from the machine to the ceiling above it, and he was astonished with what he saw. He was right. There was a bit of a leak dripping down from the ceiling onto the machine. A sigh of relief came from the man as he became relieved that he had figured out the issue. As he began leaving to retrieve items to fix the leak, he'd quickly realize another, more concerning issue. His sleeve was stuck. And just like that, in a heartbeat, everything changed. The man was yanked into the spinning machine. His body slammed between the cylinder and the base, whipping around with such force that he looked like a rag doll in the grip of a hurricane. The lathe spun faster and faster. First his shoes would fly off, then pieces of his flesh, then chunks, then his limbs. And before you knew it, he was turned into a mist. The camera captured it all. There was no time for rescue or hope of survival. Moments later, another worker in full protective gear entered from the side. He froze at the sight he saw. Red trails, shredded remains, and a stained room. He lifted his hands in complete frustration, then dropped them in despair. The unfiltered camera footage spread across the internet, shocking millions before being digitally wiped away. Safety experts pointed out the obvious in this case.
They should have been wearing safety gear. This is like what happens every single time. If you do one of the most dangerous jobs, like I'm a paranoid man. Anytime I do anything remotely dangerous, I take like every conceivable precaution to make sure that no little tiny thing goes wrong. The fact that people work in like these dangerous situations and then do things like don't wear the safety gear or send the people with 5 days of experience in to do the job or are playing with a cable that can whip around and kill you is insane to me. That's crazy.
Don't wear loose clothing around machines like these, and always keep a safe distance between them.
Like, this is such an easily avoidable thing, especially that one where you're wearing the wrong clothes and do like he did every single thing wrong. Oh, that's horrifying.
The roller incident. It was just after noon at a factory in the Saint Laurent borough of Montreal. The facility specialized in recycling plastic. Massive machines churned endlessly, crushing and shaping materials with unstoppable force. For workers, the rhythm of the rollers was just another part of the day. Clock in, crush and churn, go to sleep, repeat. Except for this day.
I feel like that's like one of the most dangerous things is it's a potentially dangerous job and you've avoided any issues for like the past 2 years. You know, you've done like 600 days of clocking in, no problems clocking out. So you become, I don't know what the word is, desensitized to it. You're like, nothing ever happens at this job. And so you just care less and less, or you're less and less careful. You become complacent. And then it just takes one thing going wrong, like not wearing protective gear.
August 8th, 2016, at around 12:15 p.m., a 56-year-old employee noticed a piece of plastic jammed in the roller machine. Determined to keep the line and the rhythm of his job moving, he climbed up a ladder and reached in to pull it free.
See, this is stuff like this. You see an extremely dangerous roller machine that's got a problem. And so your first thought is, I should stick my hand in there and fix this. What could possibly, your job and your livelihood and your boss's paycheck, shareholder value is not worth your life. Don't stick your hand in the roller machine. That's crazy. That's like your outlet being dirty. And so you take a fork to try and clean it out.
As you could guess, while trying to perform this extremely dangerous task, the rollers would pinch his finger. He'd scream in pain and try to yank it out, but in a split second, his hand was caught and effectively crushed.
What else could have happened? He got so close that his fingers got stuck in it? That means that the roller was here and his hand was like touching the rollers. That's crazy. It's not even like his hand got stuck to something that pulled it into the roller. He stuck his hand directly in the roller. It's just so many bad ideas in a succession that killed him.
Unfortunately, that wouldn't even be the worst part. The rollers dragged him in, pulling his body into the unforgiving gear-crushing machine. First his hand was sucked in, then his arm, then his head, and then his chest. His torso became wedged into the entry space of 12 centimeters before co-workers rushed to stop the machine. But by the time it halted, his body sat deeply jammed in between a space no bigger than a clenched fist. Insanely enough, however, he was actually pulled out of the machine alive. Despite...
That is... Oh no. At that point, I mean, it's just better to have died, honestly. That's crazy. You do not want to get pulled out of that alive. No, just have it over. I mean, that's true. I mean, I guess he says it up here. That is true nightmare fuel. To have survived that and experienced that and then get pulled out and have to like live the rest of your life with that having been something that happened to you. Oh no.
At his body being crushed and broken beyond repair, emergency responders rushed him to the hospital in critical condition, but there really wasn't much doctors could do. The man was literally flattened, so sadly, he succumbed to his injuries shortly after. Behind it.
And that's I mean, obviously, I don't want anyone to die ever, but kind of feels like maybe him dying was a mercy there. The life and the quality of life and just the agony he would have lived in for the rest of his life if he had survived that, I don't know if it would have been worth it.
Every phone, car, or laptop you use, there is a person. A person who spends anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day working tirelessly in a factory full of dangerous equipment to grant you these luxuries you have. Life is delicate and quick. It can be here 1 second and gone the next. So, no matter how small, always be grateful for the good you have. Don't take any of it for granted. Tell your parents, siblings, and friends you love them. And as usual, have a happy day.
That was crazy. The most painful constructions death ever by a talking hat. Crazy video. Thanks for watching.